Alright guys, so in this video, we'll talk about a very important concept. Three in one concept actually, and these are atoms, molecules, and ions. So, if you're taking a typical chemistry test, you'll need those definitions because this video is more about definitions, and you need this when you are tackling open-ended questions, or in some regions of the world, we call it theory questions. That is, so you will need these definitions, the definition of an atom, the definition of a molecule, and that of an ion. So we have two definitions for atom really quick. So let's get on to brass tacks. Now the first is this one, which is an atom is the smallest particle of an element that takes part in a chemical reaction. And this is the most basic definition for an atom. So it means if you ask to define an atom in your chemistry test, this is the simplest one you can write without racking your brain necessarily. Now, the other definition for an atom is that an atom is the smallest part of an element that can ever exist, right? And still possess the chemical properties of that element. For most people, they'll find the first one easier, which personally I also find easier. But whichever one that suits you, all right, you can go with them. And by the way, you can also define both of them in your question, all right, if you can remember both of them. But if you cannot remember both of them, just stick to the one you know you can remember much easier. All right, so we're done with that of an atom right now. We want to jump straight to molecules. So what are molecules actually? A molecule refers to the smallest particle of a substance. Now, have you seen one distinction between molecule and atoms? Look at atoms. We said an atom is the smallest particle of an element, talks about an element, but a molecule talks about a substance that normally exists alone and still retain the chemical properties of that substance, be it an element or a compound. It's a pretty lengthy definition, but you've got to know it because it's important for a molecule. This is one of the simplest definition you can have for a molecule. So in case you were asked to define a molecule, this is a very good definition to utilize. Now, we're done with the first two segments of this video, which talks about atoms and molecules. I want to jump straight right now to ions. Now, what exactly are ions? An ion is any atom, right, or group of atoms that possess an electric charge. That's an ion. Any atom or a group of atoms that can possess an electric charge. Insofar that atom has an electric charge, right, it is safe to call it an ion. And we have two types of ion, which I'm going to show you right now. And these are the cation ions and the anions. Now, whenever you see cations, take your mind to melters. And whenever you see anions, take your mind to non-melters. And when you hear melters, the charge that should come to your mind is the positive charge. And when you hear non-melters, the charge that should come to your mind is a negative charge. Now, these things are important, but what is even more important here is, or rather, are the examples. Because in a typical chemistry test, maybe in a multiple choice segment, you may be asked to give, or you may be asked which of the following is a cation and which of the following is an anion. And if you only know the definitions of cations and anions and you don't know the examples, there will be a colossal problem, and I don't want that for you. That is why I not only gave you the definition, but I also have examples laid up for you here. Now, We're going to begin with the examples of cations. Remember, I told you that cations are the ions of melters. And you know melters are positively charged, and these are examples of cations. The first we're looking at right now is magnesium. Magnesium carries a +2 charge. You see this plus here, it tells us that it is a melter that carries a charge. Now, magnesium here, you know it's a melter, right? Yes. Any melter that carries a charge is said to be a cation, because cations are also called metallic ions. Now, the next example here is aluminum. Aluminum is a melter, of course, and it carries a charge, so we are safe call it a cation. The next example we have here is sodium. Sodium carries a charge, and it's a melter, so it is safe to be a cation. Then we have potassium. Potassium carries a charge, and potassium is a melter, then it is safe to be called a cation. And lastly here we have calcium. Calcium carries a charge, and calcium is a melter, so it is safe to call it a cation. Now you may be wondering what numbers are attached to these positive charges. These numbers you see, right, they are the group they belong to. So it means magnesium, for instance, that carries a +2 charge, it means that magnesium belongs to group 2 on the periodic table. Aluminum carries a +3 charge. It means it belongs to group 3 on the periodic table. And sodium and potassium carries +1 charges respectively. It means they belong to group 1 on the periodic table. And eventually calcium carries a +2 charge. It means belongs to group 2 on the periodic table. Now, this only applies for the elements that are between group 1, 2, 3. So it means from group 4 and above, it's a different rule, alright? It is not entirely conventional. Now, let's move into the examples of anions. Anions are also called non-metallic ions. So it means they are ions of non-melters, and they always carry negative charge. The first example here we have is O2 minus. O, you see here, stands for oxygen, and it carries a charge. It is therefore called a non-metallic ion, and we call them anions. Then the second example we have is chlorine. Cl, that's chlorine, of course, I said that already, and it carries a negative charge, so it means this is safe to be called an anion because it's a non-metallic charge, non-metallic element rather. Thirdly, we have fluorine, right? Fluorine is carrying a negative charge, and fluorine, of course, is a non-melter, so it's an anion. Then we have bromine, then we have iodine. All these examples are examples of non-melters, and they carry a negative charge, so we call them anions. So you can think of more and more examples, because these examples are just a fraction from the numerous examples that we have here. Alright guys, so that is all for this video. I believe you learned something, and if you're new to the channel, why not consider subscribing so you can get and be the first to see our new videos whenever we upload a video to the channel. And do well to like the video if you haven't, and leave a comment below, and also share the video with your friends who may find it helpful as well. Alright, that is it for this video. Thanks for watching.